All right, everybody, we are recording. It is Friday, May 1st. This is the provider AWS meeting. Remember, these meetings are recorded, so follow the code of conduct. We have a few items on our agenda today, so if anybody has more, go ahead and add them. But we'll go ahead and get started with the first item, which is, so quick discussion about leadership of the SIG. Basically, we were talking about, Andrew, actually, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I was just going through some of my SIG Cloud Provider chair duties, and I'm going through a bunch of our sub-project owner files and kind of going through any users that have been inactive for more than 6 months. And so not just in the AWS project, but in a lot of projects, there are owners that are getting assigned PRs and issues by the CI bot, even though they're inactive. So I'm going to just go through a bunch of the owners file and propose that we move those people to either emeritus approvers or just remove them entirely. But yeah, I will do due diligence and ping people prior to removing them, either on Slack or I'll just ping them in the PR and give them a time to respond. Maybe they do want to start contributing again.
Got it. Cool. Does anybody else have anything on that topic?
I just want to say, I think that sounds great. I think like there are definitely some people here that have definitely been participating more over the recent months, for example, and it'd be great to reflect that in our various structures, chairs, leaders, owners, etc.
Yeah, agreed. Cool. Okay, so the next item was something that I put on there, which is sort of in a similar vein. We just had we had this demo backlog, and seems like some of these have been on for a long time, for probably more than 6 months. So I just wanted to kind of publicly ask if we should just kind of clean that up and just kind of get it on record. If anybody does want to present these demos, it'd be great to have them and for people to show up. And but I think if nobody is going to do, like, I know that Pulumi on AWS has been there for a while. I'm not actually sure what the Camus one is. Do you guys know if that one was ever?
I think the Camus one, the person that wanted to present it, Omer LH, had a time conflict effectively, so can't really present in this slot. So last I spoke to him, which was admittedly a very long time ago, there was interest, but not in this time slot. So we could definitely move it off the top point, and that would put, and we could see if Nishi, who's technically up next, wants to do it, and then otherwise we could go to Nadir and see if Nadir actually wants to present that next time. I presume you're not ready to do it right now. Oh, you're.
I think you're muted, or
yeah.
Not right now.
Okay, good.
Not just this moment.
I just wanted to give you the opportunity, but yeah. So yeah, awesome. I agree with that.
Okay. One thing we could propose to Omer is if he wants to present at another time slot, we could just schedule a presentation that's specific to that, kind of a separate meeting for that.
Or a video that gets shared with the mailing list, anything like that might work as well.
Yeah, okay. I'll just put a note in Okay, Justin, do you want to reach out to him since you've spoken to him in the past?
Yeah, I can do that.
All right, and then if we don't hear back on Pulumi, I can reach out to Nishi actually and see if she still wants to present that. Awesome. All right.
Sorry, do we want to schedule Nadir for 2 weeks? Do you want to do that in 2 weeks, Nadir?
Why not? Sure.
Yay!
Sweet. All All right. That's awesome. So we'll do that next meeting. So the next one, me and Andrew were talking about this earlier this week, publishing images for the external CCM repo. So there's two pieces to this, and I need to check to see. I posted a message in the Kate's Infra working group to see if anybody had comments on what the best way to basically add these images to I guess I should say CNCF owned AWS account or ECR repo. But in the meantime, while that sort of gets figured out, I started the process of just building a simple CI pipeline internally at Amazon. So it's not the ideal situation, but I think I can, I'm already basically halfway done. So, by early next week, I should be able to publish the first image for that. And I think that'll hold us over until we until we all decide how we want to do the sort of CNCF owned ECR repo, I guess. So if anybody has anything to add to that or has comments on, Justin, you might have an opinion on whether we should share with the COPS test accounts or not.
Yes, I'm going to put a link to a PR, which should be the working group Kate's Infra process to get a new repo. And it basically is the same, should be the same no matter what the project is. The one I linked to is actually etcd, which had binary releases, and so that got a little held up there, but I think the process is the same. Unless I screwed it up in some other way, that's one of mine, so I'm familiar with it. Unless I screwed it up in some other way, the process should be the same here. And then effectively what we get is we get a working group, a staging Docker repo, and a method by which they can be promoted to the official Kate's GCR repo in the CNCF billing account. For the accounts question, something which came up again on Wednesday was at the last working group Kate's Infra meeting was the idea of understanding where money is being spent. And at least for GCE, and this is actually probably probably the perfect place to discuss it, we thought that the right way to do that would be at the project level, because that way you don't have to rely on each job to correctly tag their resources, which can be a little like, if someone messes it up, then you have this big bucket of like, who knows? And so from that point of view, that would then imply there are different BOSCOS pools for the different AWS jobs, and we have to somehow teach BOSCOS. So from the point of view of, do I mind you sharing? Not at all. And like you're feeling like we should, you can do that and get going with that. From the point of view of long-term, I think we are going to end up with some using accounts, or on GCP, we're going to use projects as the way that we easily track billing back. I don't know if the obvious analogy on AWS would be to use accounts. We do have the ability to create accounts more or less dynamically. I'm still working through some of the wrinkles there, but that more or less works. And there is supposed to be a limit. We haven't found it yet. So I guess we could create a pool of more accounts that would be dedicated to this, like this particular set of jobs or whatever you want to call it. And then we would know how much we were spending on each one. It might be we don't care until the money becomes more significant.
Coming from the other side, does that mean each repo will have its own GCP project? Or what's the delineation on?
Unclear. The idea was that effectively we're going to move all these PROW jobs to the CNCF infrastructure, and we're going to see that the spend on CNCF goes from, let's say, $1,000 a month to $100,000 a month, right? And the question is, where is that $100,000 going? And we can look at it by service easily. So we can say, like, we're spending $20,000 on bandwidth or whatever it is. But if we want to say which of the test jobs are the most expensive, we don't have an easy way to do that. And it's also not clear how we should, how granular we should get. And I think basically we're going to start with pretty rough granularity, and so probably a lot of sharing, and then move to much more granular as we need more detail. Like, so the biggest vendors. GCP projects are, as far as I know, more or less unlimited. So it might be we do end up doing one project per job. But honestly, I don't know how painful it's going to be to manage all this. AWS projects are, I suspect, a lot more restricted in terms of the number we can get immediately. And so I imagine we wouldn't do one project for each job, but maybe per repo, or maybe just groups of repos, like maybe one for cluster API, maybe one for AWS CCM, one for COPS, that sort of thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense to separate, at least at the high level sort of project, or like, yeah, cluster API, COPS, and CCM. Cool.
Yeah.
So I did add one item on this topic. For folks that do want to test the CCM right now, because you don't have a public image, you can, it's pretty easy to build your own image and use like a personal public repository on Docker Hub, which I've been doing fly testing. And then I just opened the PR yesterday that adds a sample manifest based on a Kubedium deployment. And so that you might have to tweak some of the node selector stuff or taints based on how your cluster is set up, but those manifests should, like, as long as you stub in your own image, that should work. So if folks want to test out CCM, please use those and let us know.
Yeah, thanks for doing that, Andrew. Super helpful. On a related note, the Authenticator release, I started working on that yesterday. I know I promised it for this meeting, but so that should be either today or maybe I'll finish it up over the weekend. But Peter, if you could help me just run a couple tests before I publish the final binaries. And then I also have a work in progress pull request for like an E2E test runner. And I want to use COPS for that. So I have COPS spinning up the E2E test. The thing that I'm trying to figure out right now is like, what's the best way so COPS has this built-in authenticator capability where you just set authentication in the config file, and it's just AWS. Like the way that I'm hoping there's a better way to do this, but right now what I was trying to do is create the cluster with that setting and then modify the authenticator pod to the image to be what I want it to be, the one that I just built for the testing. Do you guys have any ideas on
the API field to enable the authenticator pods on a COPS cluster also supports, there's an image field, so you can override the image used.
Okay.
So you could do that. Right now you do have to be editing that manifest and then doing a COPS replace. There's no CLI flag support to set that, to enable authenticator or to set the image in a COPS create cluster command, for example. We could look at piping that in. It might be a reasonable thing to support, so yeah.
Got it. Cool. Okay, I'll have you, the work in progress PR is open on Authenticator. It's just the sort of basics of a script to start the test, and there's no test yet, but if you want to take a look at it, or I can, when I get a little farther, I'll ping it too.
Yeah, sounds good.
Can I ask, where does the test live? Like, one of the things I'm trying to figure out is how we start adding our own, like COPS today only has the Kubernetes E2E tests. And one of the things I'm trying to figure out is how we could add tests for additional functionality that are sort of COPS specific, like logging in, like with AWS IAM Authenticator, or like a COPS rolling update, or whatever it would be, right?
Are you talking about like during runtime, where would it live? Like,
Yeah, or like where are you putting the, where is the, it sounds like you have code right now, and how is it sort of working?
Right now, it's just the figuring out how to start the test. There are no tests. So,
Okay.
and they're also, they don't, like they would run in your AWS account. So I haven't done anything in terms of like, does that make sense? Like,
It does. We can talk more about maybe on Slack or something about like some of the things I've been thinking about here. But yeah, it's because I don't think we don't have a, as far as I know, in the existing COPS tests, and Peter would probably correct me if I'm wrong, we don't have an entry point or a hook point to do anything like other than like we can subset the set of E2E tests we run, but we don't have a way to like add another test in the mix or add another step to the mix other than the default flow, bring up a cluster, run the tests down the cluster.
Right. I think we'd have to add a hook in the test infra kube test code to one, clone the COPS repo with whatever commit. I think in the pre-submits, we clone it in order to build that commit, but for the periodics, we don't clone the COPS repo at all. So we need to enable that and add logic to additionally run tests from that repo.
Is there also say a case to be made for trying the cluster API with the testing framework? Some of this as well.
yeah.
Yeah, so we've I think we've got to a stage where we've got a bunch of like helper methods to spin up HA control planes, test scaling, and we probably want to start adding in hooks to test the CCM and other bits and pieces anyway. So we might be able to do something now.
What are you using today, Nadir? Are you using kube test or something else?
No, we've written our own stuff.
Nice.
So
What's it called?
Yeah, it's all in the test directory in cluster API, and we're in the process of moving Kappa to it. So the vSphere providers, vSphere cluster API is already using it. Yeah, so it's just a sort of library and helper methods to be able to spin up the test. So it's like we don't want to have the sort of you have to take everything at once. So stability. So it's meant for you to be able to hook things into. At least it will be over time. So
yeah, that could be interesting to take a look at as well. Do you think it's something that, since I haven't gotten very far with these, is it something that I should look at now, or something that would be more ready in a few months' time?
I'm thinking almost weeks in terms of getting Kappa transferred over to the new framework. Yeah, so I think we want to start beefing it up like ASAP almost.
Cool. All right, so the next thing on the agenda is issue triage, but Peter, you have an item at the bottom. I think we should just talk about that first. Do you want to?
Yeah.
Want to take that
one? So this is kind of blurry because it's not a Kubernetes repo. It's under the AWS GitHub org, but it's I'm working on integrating it into COPS, and it's a webhook that will inject environment variables so that the AWS SDK can authenticate against using service account tokens. The webhook's image is not publicly hosted anywhere, even on ECR, to my knowledge. So I'm just curious if that can be published either through AWS or through CNCF.
Yeah, you're correct. It's not publicly hosted. I want it to be, and I was going to take this up at some point. I just was sort of waiting for people to complain enough to prioritize it. So yeah, I think it's something that we can do. I have other things probably that are more important at this point, but if you keep bugging me, then I'd say we can probably get all that stuff, get the repo and stuff created for it in the next few weeks or months, maybe the next month, I'll say. So yeah,
Well,
I'll bring that back to my team. All right. Okay, so for issue triage, one thing we can do is we can look at the open issues in Kubernetes repo. We could also look at anything that's opened in the cloud provider repo itself. And then we probably won't get to it, but there are the other like Authenticator and various other projects that we are sort of responsible for. So what do you guys think?
So I was going through the cloud provider AWS repo issues the other day. I was just wondering, like, when the last time triage was done. I'm just trying to gauge what kind of users are posting issues. Is it like folks that are trying to integrate with Copster or EKS, or if it's just users out in the wild just giving it a try? Because I'm wondering, like, how they're trying it without a published image and all that stuff. Like, are they just doing everything from scratch? So yeah, when was the last time?
So one thing, I think probably they're doing everything from scratch, and I think also there's probably some confusion because I've seen duplicate issues that people just like don't know where to create it. They have some cloud provider issue and they create one in Kubernetes and one in the cloud provider repo. So, and then also yeah, and then we haven't done a triage specific to the cloud provider repo yet. So I don't think I've personally looked at the issues in some time. Does that help answer your question? Cool. So do you guys think, would you guys prefer to start with issues in KK or cloud provider?
We did KK previously. I think we got sort of stuck. Why don't we do, like, a lot of them are sort of very tricky. Why don't we go through the cloud provider ones and see if, particularly if some of them are going to be duplicated anyway.
Yeah, let's do that. All right. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can.
What? Oh, I did not. There we go. Is open. So we could sort by most commented. We can do recently updated. Start with recently updated.
Actually, I was looking at this one yesterday. If you scroll down, I think there's some, yeah, like, I think it's a lot to do with the fact that we don't document well what's required in the cluster. So if you're running an outer tree setup and the cluster isn't tagged with the Kubernetes cluster tag, and the node name's not the private DNS, and you run into all sorts of issues of unregistration.
Right.
So I think that's what this user is seeing. Yeah, I mean, you can assign to me. I can follow up. We don't have to dig into it.
Cool. That's a command, right? Assign/assign.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it worth creating some milestones for stuff? I don't know, for like prioritize stuff.
Yeah, I think it definitely is. I don't know if I have the ability to. Let's see. Milestones. Do you normally create them here?
No, the milestones.
Oh no, right here.
Yeah, maybe you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe if you use the labels priority, important soon, and important long term, then now.
Yeah, that works. Yeah, critical urgent, important long term, important soon. Cool. Let's do that. All right, yeah, this needs a little bit more handling of Kate's resources. Okay. Definitely needs to be expanded upon.
I mean, I think I know what that means. That's basically like if you wanted to plug in your own controller to implement load balancer, you could do that. But if you do that today, you turn off everything at once. My understanding. I think that's what we're talking about, but we'll see. I agree that like some detail would be helpful there.
Yeah, understanding his specific use case.
I think there's a awaiting more evidence label. Might be.
Oh, is there? Okay. Let's see. Actually, awaiting more evidence.
Try priority awaiting more evidence maybe.
Oh, yeah.
Oh wait, it did. Wait, someone put it on there.
I just did it.
Like, okay.
Oh, okay.
I also don't think updating the comments works. Yeah, you have to add a new one.
Oh, really? Okay. All right.
This is a dupe of a long-standing issue, which is that we should allow this. I think we have the list of 5 prerequisites that have to happen for this to happen. We have no objection to this happening. It's just has to be like a migration path and that sort of thing. Or so I will find the Kubernetes issue. I presume we want to just close it as a well. I don't know which way we want to start closing these things.
That's a good question. It's more than just AWS, right? Does this apply to?
Yes.
Or would the annotation be AWS specific?
The annotation might be AWS specific. I think the problem set is cross cloud provider.
Yeah, and we added actually a new interface method to allow setting like a custom name for the load balancer, but then any of the entry providers haven't changed that to be a breaking change. So it's pretty much a problem for any of the old providers. So I actually think that a better path forward for this might actually be doing semantic versioning of the provider implementations. And so like, instead of trying to migrate users to use an annotation or whatever, we should just say like, we're releasing an AWS Provider v2. And that can have a better naming for load balancers, and it could fix the host name issue, it having to be private DNS, and whatever other legacy issues we have with the AWS Provider, we can just do a v2. And that way it's clear to users, like if you want to use it, you need to create a new cluster and whatnot.
Yeah.
What do folks think about that?
I think I think we should create a tracking issue for things that could be considered V2 and get feedback on whether people think that's a reasonable approach. But I like it because I think it's easier for us to just, like, I think a lot of the code actually in the existing AWS provider is, it's been kind of written over a long period of time, and some of it's a little bit hard to follow. So I think if we're going to be, and there's a lot of behavior that people probably rely on, but has a bunch of corner cases, especially with like the load balancer annotations and the security groups, and just it would be nice to have a clean slate to start from and be able to break some of those assumptions. So I'm all for that, but I think we should create an issue and just get feedback on it.
Yeah,
What do you think, Justin?
I think it'd be nice to aggregate those up. I am very wary of breaking changes because the problem is we will be sort of stuck supporting the old thing as well as the new thing. And like, I don't think users will be very keen. Like anyone that has stateful apps in their cluster will be won't be very keen to move quickly. So it's going to be, it could be a long time. I'm also not convinced that like either node naming or load balancer naming has to be done that way. Like, I don't think either one of them is breaking changes. I don't think either of them have to be done as breaking changes. Like we could easily, like for the load balancer, we can drop a tag, look for the tag, have a period where we like, we set the tag, but don't use the tag, have a period where we like use the tag, like make the tag primary, like identify things that way. For the node name, the problem is we just need to get the volume providers to be more careful about passing node names instead of, passing node objects instead of node names. And that would be very helpful. That might happen because they're going out of tree anyway. So we might be able to make progress on both of those regardless.
Yeah, I agree. I think I mainly brought it up just as an option going forward on how to think about some of these problems, because if we are anticipating a V2, then we can categorize these problems as like a V2 thing versus, oh, let's start thinking about complicated migration paths for them. And I'm starting to think that, like, at least from my experience, like working on providers, like some of these things are like super hard to change, and even if you create migration paths, they just get really complicated really fast. And so yeah, just wanted to entertain the idea, and maybe this needs a cap or something, but just want to throw it out there.
Yeah, I think we should at least start with just maybe an issue entertaining the idea without committing to anything, and just say like, what, I don't know, just I think we should just get feedback on it. But
yeah, sounds good. I can do that.
Cool.
And I'll try to link this to the existing. I'll try to find the existing discussion in KK.
Cool. Okay, this is a duplicate, I believe. Let's see if anybody linked it. So maybe we can find it really quick. could be different. All right, I'll assign this one to myself to either dig into or ask one of my team members to. Cool. What? Oh. All right, the creation of an
This one's sort of interesting. It says this is about, it seems that this is about the number of security group rules rather than number of security groups, which is the way this has previously been presented, right? So in other words, if I have like VoIP and I want to do like 100 ports, like I think we create 100 rules today, whereas we could express that as a port range and therefore have one security group and one security group rule rather than one security group and 100 security group rules. Is that how other people are reading this? It's always
yes. A range of node ports or create an annotation that effectively disables the automatic creation of a security rule. Hard limits to the number of rules. Sorry, go ahead.
I think there are two parts to this. One of them is I've often heard people wanting to specify a range of ports on a service, which to my knowledge we don't yet support, and we say you just write out all 100 ports. And the other one is, so we could make that better. The other one is we could also like merge adjacent ports. The challenge is, so in other words, if you see port 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, then I create a rule. I don't create 10 rules. I create one rule which says port range 1 to 10, which I believe is allowed in security group rules. I presume it is. That might have weird failure semantics. Like if I do that and then delete one in the middle, then I have more security group rules, and maybe that would then fail to, but I feel like that's okay. So we could certainly do that. This might be one to like.
Yeah, if you do that, then delete one in the middle, then it has to revert to two separate ranges or something.
Yeah, so it wouldn't be able to, it would be unable to apply the second range, I presume. So you'd end up with,
or it would have to be very smart.
I suspect if we delete first, well, yeah, maybe we can't do that. Yeah, maybe we create the new ones first, and then, yeah. Anyway, that is a problem, but we could do that and tell people that deleting in the middle of a range is likely to cause trouble. That's not, I mean, you'd have to be pretty pathological to actually like cause this to happen, right? Like to actually go from a nice adjacent range and then I delete every other one to like go over the limit. That's pretty like, yeah, it is a theoretical problem more than a real world problem, I imagine. I actually don't know.
I mean, if you just have 3 ports that are adjacent and you delete the middle one, which, I mean, doesn't seem like such a unlikely scenario. But anyway, yeah. So next steps for this issue. it's a feature. It sounds like it could be, like if we're talking about the implementation that you were just mentioning, that could be done as an AWS only thing. But if it's some change to like allow port ranges in a broader sense, then it wouldn't be. Is that correct?
Yes. I think actually the problem I described arises no matter what, right? Like I can always, whether we render it efficiently or not, I can always make a change to the service, the set of ports, such that I can trigger this behavior. But yes, I'd imagine we could do, it would be an AWS only thing that we could do, but it would also be like, it's not like other clouds couldn't implement the same thing. I don't think there's any reason to expose a library to help clouds do such a thing. Doesn't seem like it's that hard to, the complexity is going to be making AWS calls, not like finding adjacent numbers. It'd be good to, yeah, I'll ask you more about the use case.
Yeah.
Because it's also interesting to say like node port. That's confusing to me rather than like an ELB.
Okay. Let's just see how the conversation develops on this. And we can go from there. Does anybody want this assigned to them, or should we just leave it unassigned for now?
Let's get a use case. I'll ask for a use case.
Yeah. Cool. All right. I think that was this one. Okay, so load balancer IP support for Amazon load balancer. Amazon Cloud support.
This one's interesting actually, because the other providers that set load balancer IP but don't set the host name run into a bunch of problems because of the way kubeproxy does like a short path in the cluster for the load balancer IP. So pretty much if you set load balancer IP, if you use that IP in the cluster, it routes locally through kubeproxy and not back out to the LB, and that causes a whole bunch of problems for people. It's just something to consider.
Do you mean I can steal like a, is this an attack, or is this does this happen naturally like in some way?
It's a kubeproxy behavior. So if it sees load balancer IP on the service status, it creates local IP table rules so that any traffic to that load balancer IP gets forwarded to the pods locally. And I think it's mostly it was mainly added for GKE because GKE requires like the load balancer routes to exist on the nodes. But that's pretty much the behavior if you set load balancer IP. The local traffic in your cluster for the load balancer IP doesn't go back out to the load balancer. It gets locally rerouted to the pods.
Isn't that what I want?
Okay, so
is that what I want or not? Sorry.
Yeah, I think it depends who you're asking. Like, I think that's what you want, but there are a lot of cases where you actually want to route back up to the load balancer because you want the load balancer to force TLS, or you want it to do some protocol on the load balancer layer. So you want it to go back out and back into the cluster.
So this feature need because many customers use firewalls and need use static IP on our server side. I can't tell if they want, do they want the traffic to go through the load balancer at all times? Is that what they're saying? They use.
I think they just want to recreate a service, sorry, an ELB and have it, or an NLB, I think, and have it like not have to update their DNS records effectively. Is my guess. And DNS records is shorthand for also like, I talk to a customer who insists that my DNS record doesn't change. because they have some security thing or something.
Yeah, the real ask is they want to set an elastic IP to the load balancer. I don't think they care how it's done, so not necessarily through load balancer IP. The real ask is they want to be able to use elastic IP. It's usually FTP.
So according to someone, it was supported in the entry cloud provider. Okay,
Yeah.
I think this. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, and it looked like that person then commented that it wasn't in the out-of-tree cloud provider. My understanding is the out-of-tree cloud provider now is a mirror of the in-tree cloud provider, which wasn't the case when that person made that comment. So it might be that it is now supported.
Yeah. So this just needs someone to first determine if we can just close this. I can take that, or if anybody else wants to.
Yeah, I'm just trying to follow along. Like, it looks like it's, so it's not going to be the load balancer IP, but it's going to be via this annotation.
Are you talking about the in-tree support, or what are you following along with?
I'm just reading the issue, and it sounds like people are deciding that it should work with the annotation. Like 9 days ago, someone commented it works by the annotation. So it sounds like perhaps unintentionally the annotation avoids the problem that Andrew described. We did that totally on purpose.
Yeah, that explains it. And like, it's actually a really big problem for the other providers, because like, especially if the source traffic is a load balancer's IP, then like if a load balancer sends a health check like request, then that gets dropped because kproxy reroutes it. So there's all sorts of problems. So it's actually a good thing that it's using an annotation and not the status.
So because it's in the annotation, like we don't have kube-proxy rules that reflect that. Okay. Interesting.
This might be one where we can like check with the OP Sergei Safarov whether the annotation is appropriate for his or their use case.
There's also a cap in progress that adds a field to status to make this optional. So if it becomes optional in the future, then we can allow updates on status, and then we can let people optionally disable it.
So is this a valid question? Does the annotation mention above?
I might just like make it explicit, like should we close? Should we mark as fixed? Should we close as fixed or something?
Cool.
You should be like, it's awesome.
The status is awesome.
Close. Awesome. Close.
I think I commented on this a while back.
So I worked on the docs for the external vSphere cloud provider. So I'm familiar with the tooling to generate docs and then add a site to our NetFly account. So I can take this one. I don't know how much time I can commit to it, but I can take a stab at it. Or at least we could deploy a site with all the pages we want, like with no content, and then we can assign the various pages to other people to work on it.
Yeah, that would be super awesome. But would you be willing to teach me how to do that? Maybe we could sort of tackle this together, and you can, just so I know for the future.
Yeah, sure. We're using Gitbooks, so maybe we can set up a time to chat offline.
Awesome. Awesome. I will say, we are stronger statement. In the coming days, that sounds.
I think we should also try to encourage people to like, these people obviously care, so I like figure out ways they can help and get involved is always a good way.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Like, can we point them to the documentation? Or, yeah.
Thanks for your interest. I'll say this. We are working on investing in documentation and publishing images, but are you saying like I should suggest that they contribute, or are you saying I just point them to the existing, like there isn't too much existing documentation, so.
Yeah, if there are places they can contribute, I would point them to it, like give them a pointer to how they can do it. Like it sounds like we don't have yet a great place to propose anything, but like we're always looking for help, and let's organize around this issue type thing. It's always a good way to punt.
PR is welcome.
Yeah, but PR is welcome is a bit like abstract, right? Like send a PR here or send a PR here is better.
Do you mind being included in that, Justin?
Please do. Yeah.
Okay. Peter and Jared, do you guys want to be called out to help with the documentation?
I think like when we get the image up, that will be a big step. Having it like work in cluster API, having it work in COPS or OC work, right? Like, you know, like here's how you can do it, and then like, you know, try it out and like fix things you find. I think that will be a good like call to action. And having a doc site where people can like write up and fix problems is super helpful.
Agreed.
Yeah, maybe as an action item, Nick, we can have the templated docs site up for the next provider meeting, and then we can assign that work out to people.
Yeah, let's do that. Okay. Looks like we're out of time, so it's a good place to break. I will go ahead and stop recording if I can stop sharing. Unless anybody has anything to say before I stop the recording. All right, thanks everybody for joining.
Thanks for hosting, Nick.